Wow.
We're only doing Canada for a few more years. Canadian
That's a lot of work.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's a lot of work.
What is it? Do you have like a set standard that, like a checklist or something that you have to go through? Or?
Checklist is a loaded word under the circumstances. Well, there's guidelines and principles that are sort of the holy writ, and then sort of we apply those using professional judgment. And then there's also a set of implementing regulations that are intended to interpret it more clearly both for us and for them, so that when discussions arise about what particular terms mean, implementing regulations can pass.
Good idea.
So what we do varies a little bit across the 4 meetings of the year, but there's both program review and there's policy discussion about what the regulations ought to be when we want to review, but as new questions arise, like over the last year or so, there's been a lot of discussion of distance education and telesupervision, which are kind of major issues as educational practices change. And some other things that we said a while ago, like the safety supported treatment.
You mean people had an issue with crediting or something like empirically supported treatment? And if I'm understanding this correctly, that means treatment that's already been verified to work?
The question before us, the guidelines and principles make clear that empirically supported treatment should be included, but it's never been clear to the programs or the reviewers. And so the assertion is that it's not been clear what that meant in terms of like how much and was there a list of such programs that should use, what included, not included, and so forth. So we've been wrestling over, well, actually even before I got on for the issue came up, but we actually did pass last week an implementing regulation that clears some of this up. And so in the meantime, there hasn't been a lot of enforcement. There's a lot of clarity, even though it's in the gut of the gut. And we went through periods of public comment, and I was somewhat surprised and appalled, even though I wasn't surprised, at the number of people who started their public comments by saying that everybody knows that psychological treatments are not and should not be based on science.
They want to prove it with what?
Not an argument that I think is going to go anywhere in the current environment without evidence-based medicine gaining grounds rapidly, and insurance companies and managed care systems and the government that sort of insisting that there's evidence for what you do. But there's a substantial percentage of psychologists and certain models of training programs that are I would say are anti-science. They since they oppose basic things on research, I think it's reasonable to say that. Because they write things in their statements like science education is a waste of time for psychologists, and they have multiple ways of knowing. And science is at best one of those, and often is argued to be flawed one of those. Oh, that's an interesting time. But there's also a different accrediting body being formed by the clinical science and psychology programs, psychological clinic.
Clinical as opposed to research-oriented?
In this case, it's the programs that are both the psychological clinical science programs are the ones that are the most science-oriented other training and professionals. See, like, there's a clinical science models which are heavy on the science end of things. The standard model from like the 40s onward was the scientist practitioner, which is sort of one of the two. There's kind of a continuum, and then there's a variety of practitioner model programs that argue that knowing how to do science is not an important part of being a professional, but scholarship would do it.
Is it similar to like Carl Rogers' approach, where he didn't feel like he needed to empirically prove his methods, or is it more extreme?
Well, Rogers is an interesting example of what happens because early on, Rogers was a researcher. He did some early research on, I think, using his client-centered method too with schizophrenics in the state hospital in Wisconsin. And actually, one of the first things I read about professional psychology when I was in college, almost 40 years ago, was written by Rogers, and it was on the scientist practitioner model. And then later in his life, when he this is true, I'm not just making fun of California, he moved to Southern California and actually kind of finished off his life at one of the practitioner model schools down in San Diego. And so he sort of got, it's unfortunate to have to say this, but sort of more and more humanistic and less scientific, although I don't think the two have to be at odds as time went on. And there are, present company accepted, of course, moving to California doesn't seem to be a good move for scientific psychologists. Let's keep right on going. Even Fritz Perls, the Gestalt therapist, was kind of less of a guru and more of a scientist and scholar when he was still back in the middle of the country, east of the Rockies. And I remember where he was before he came to California. And sort of hanging out at SMU. Does anybody know if Gestalt therapy is still around? I've been meaning to check on this. It's come up in conversation a couple of times. I haven't heard anybody mention it in a decade or two.
I learned what it was in an intro psych class.
There used to be a Gestalt Institute like on the west side of LA. I used to hear about it. I can't remember anybody talked about it.
Looks like there's still institutes around.
Huh?
I just Googled it, and it's like there's still quite a few institutes around. San Francisco, New York, New Orleans, Cleveland, Philadelphia.
Still out there somewhere.
I had a random thought that's completely non-related to anything that we've talked about today so far.
Okay.
But for Alzheimer's, if we can figure out like where it's starting to like tear apart the brain and those parts of the brain are dying, has anybody tried going in and like excising that portion of the brain? Because if you're going to lose it anyway.
Taking it out would be a bad idea.
Well, I can imagine, but like, what about like killing the decaying matter and like the immediate surfaces there? Has anybody tried that?
No, to my knowledge, it hasn't been tried, and I think one of the problems would be that the cell death is too diffuse. It's not like there's a kind of a body or
So it's not like a tumor or something, it's kind of here and there.
It's like you've got cells, even though it's sort of loosely localized in the beginning and follows a sort of loosely progressive, somewhat predictable payoff. It's sort of, yeah. And anyway, I think like taking out the hippocampus would be a good thing. We've done other things like lobotomies and stuff.
Yeah, I was wondering like along those lines.
Not hugely different, I suppose. My early days of my career, I met some people that have had lobotomies earlier on. Most of them had cognitive problems. Not too surprising. Some of them said that they were better after than before. Anyway, any follow-up questions to last week's talks on depression and anxiety, before we start talking about how to fix things, and see if you know what it is we're trying to fix? Everybody's good? They did a good job?
They did a great job. Yeah.
I told a couple of people this individually as I mentioned Margie's lecture. If you ever get a chance to hear her talk about risk factors for dementia, don't pass it up. She's always right up to date and has one of the best